Peace, family, and welcome to Denali Vision. I'm your host, LeVar Anderson, and I'm bringing nothing but facts. I'm a father on a quest for justice, and it has been one hell of a fight. My son, Denali Anderson, was savagely murdered on August 6, 2022, at an underage drinking party in Pasco, Washington, by a group of teenagers that call themselves the Tri-City Blitz Gang. This is my raw and unfiltered truth of how one man, my son, was murdered by the city, tortured by the county, and buried by the state. So let's get into it. If this is your first time watching, family, and you need to be up to date, we ended the last video titled It's Not What It Looks Like on the trajectory of all the bullets that struck the suspect vehicle, the white Nissan, with more than majority of those shots, I say 90%, hell, 99.99%, you are the father. Those bullet holes were on the passenger side of the vehicle. On the passenger side of the vehicle. So again, family, if this is your first time, please go back and start with One Father's Quest for Justice. That video is going to detail why Denali Vision is mandatory for shedding light on a corrupt Franklin County, Washington system that's doing everything in its power to stop us from receiving justice. Now, if you are unaware, there have been various articles put out about my son stating that after he was shot, he fell and retrieved his .22 and unloaded his magazine. Not only is this defamation of character on behalf of the prosecutors, but on the Tri-City Herald as well. You're subject to libel. If you remember, family, and you can go back and look these articles up for yourself, they all have one common theme: that my son unloaded his magazine, but with no gun, but with no video of him shooting, or no gunshot residue on his hands. Now, all of the articles are symmetrically stating Denali is supposedly arguing with the driver, Brian Panduro, on the driver's side of the vehicle. Garcia then gets out of the vehicle from the rear passenger side and shoots Anderson. Anderson falls and retrieves his .22 and unloads his magazine. Now, you get shot, you unload your magazine, not towards the person who shot him, according to court documents, who's Angel Garcia, or that person, should have been shot. Angel should have been shot. Again, you shoot at me, I fall, I'ma shoot at you, hopefully hit you. Well, I know I would, but Angel wasn't shot. Again, Brian the driver was shot in the low back and right shoulder from left to right, coming from the back rear side. So in the words of prosecutor Brian Holgren, defense attorney Brian Holgren, it's physically impossible for Denali to curve a bullet that will come around and hit Brian's right shoulder. It's physically impossible for Denali to curve a bullet and hit Brian directly to the low back if he's already on the ground, family, and he unloads his magazine towards the driver in the suspect white Nissan. Now, if he did shoot at the Nissan, all of those shots after he fell would be coming from a downward shooting up position. It's plain as day, right? Now, you on the ground. You're shooting from down going up. Again, those shots that are on the passenger side of the vehicle are coming from the left to the right direction from the back rear side, which the side Denali did not fall on. The only damage on the driver's side was a bullet hole, a small bullet hole, and it was too small to fit a trajectory rod into it. So that could have came of anywhere. So now, family, we're going to go ahead and get into a couple different versions of Brian's statements to detectives and detective statements reverberating Brian's injuries as he was shot in the melee. So I'm going to go ahead and start by reading one of the officer's statements who met with Brian at the hospital. He was in one of the treatment rooms and made contact with Brian Panduro, Venezuela. With him was Osman. Again, both of them wanted for first-degree kidnapping out of Kennewick, right across the bridge. Did they run the names? They have the names, but they were interviewed as victims. Now, in one of the treatment rooms, I made contact with Brian Panduro, Venezuela. He was receiving medical care for a gunshot wound to his, wait for it, back and right shoulder. So now, this detective has Osman leave the room and speak with him in the hallway. So now we're going to go ahead and get into a little bit of Osman's statement to set the scene. And we'll get back into that later. I mean, you can go ahead and read it for yourself, but I want to go ahead and skip down to this part where it says, down here, where it says, he said, which would be Osmond, someone gave him and his group info about a party on Pimlico as they left the party downtown. Now, there was another party everyone attended at a downtown Pasco saloon that was shut down for underage drinking. At that location, Isabel Lepez, the driver of the white Jeep Liberty, was pushed. There was an altercation, but she doesn't know what the person who pushed her looks like. So multiple cars followed to another party, another underage drinking party, yet police don't intercept any of the vehicles on the way to this one. So, the suspects, they're already ready. I mean, it was just an altercation. Even though that altercation downtown didn't involve Denali, they seemed like they were still pumped up, still ready for a fight. So when they went to the next party, let's just go ahead and kill somebody. So again, he said he drove downtown, which is Osmond. He drove downtown, but because he was drunk, Brian drove to Pimlico. So Brian drove to Pimlico, just so there's no misconceptions, no confusion as to who drove the white Nissan. Brian stated that he drove to the party and pulled over on the side of the road. The video shows Brian being pulled out of the driver's seat, and I have a still frame of that image. So we know Brian was the driver of the white Nissan. We know Isabel Lepez was the driver of the white Jeep Liberty with B, and the other two females she didn't know, which witnesses stated the white Jeep was clearly involved in the shooting, and she had two ski masks in the vehicle, along with bullet casings near the rear of her car. Again, the accomplices, we know, the two girls, cousins, were drivers of the silver Prius, plus Davis, Fields, and Jackson were their passengers of the silver Prius. So now that we've established all the drivers, let's go ahead and move forward. All right. So now, Brian was interviewed the first time at the hospital by, we're going to go ahead and call this guy Detective 3. And Brian states, Brian drove from the location. That's number one. Remember that, family. Brian drove from the location. This was the first time he talked to detectives at the hospital. However, he realized his car had a flat tire and was only able to make it to Maverick on Road 68, which we know is not true because they made it to the Maverick, stopped to let Angel out to get into the silver Prius as the white Nissan continued to drive off. So, even if that was the case, the white Nissan would have been found at the Maverick, which it was not. Now, his statement goes on to say he did not see where the shooting occurred, nor who was doing the shooting. So, family, number one, Brian said that he drove from the location. Okay? You're a victim. You're just sitting in your car. All of a sudden, you're shot by a stray bullet. He doesn't say someone unloaded on me or several shots hit the car, glass shattered, and I could see the bullets ricocheting off the car, and then I realized I had been shot. None of that. It was a stray bullet, and you can't go back now. It's on paper. Okay? So now we're going to go back to Detective 1 affidavit, and that states, while Pasco police officers were at the scene early in the investigation, dispatch stated that another male was brought into Cadillac with a gunshot wound. Pasco detectives were already on the way to Cadillac to talk to Caden and were asked, they seemed to like to do a lot of asking, asked to talk to the male later identified as Brian Panduro. Detectives obtained a statement from Brian Panduro, presuming he was also a victim. Okay, so you're asked to talk to Brian Panduro. He's wanted for first degree kidnapping out of Kennewick, but let's interview him as a victim. All right. Panduro told detectives that he and his friend Osmond, okay, who's also wanted for first degree kidnapping. So they got both names. They never ran the names, obviously, otherwise they would have had them right there. Okay, so Osmond and Brian were away from the party, toking it in the car when they were hit by a bullet. Now, Brian was the only one shot, so they weren't hit by a bullet. I mean, I can see if he's insinuating they, as in them sitting in the car, and then they were hit by a bullet. Now, Osmond was present at the hospital and interviewed as a witness and gave a similar statement. Okay, so Here's one of the officers who also went to the hospital to speak to Brian and Osmond. I mean, they were spoken to by numerous officers who failed to realize, or wait a minute, did they? I mean, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Silly me, right? They failed to realize that these two clowns had warrants out of Kennewick for first degree kidnapping. I mean, how hard is it to run a name, but they're victims? I mean, the black boy's dead. That's all that matters. Everybody else is a victim. So now this officer writes in his report he's asked to go to Cadillac. He finds out another person had been shot. It was Brian Panduro in the room with Osmond. The officer witnessed Osmond wearing the shirt Brian was wearing when he was shot in the, wait for it, low back and right arm. Brian says they were parked on the side of the road near the party when people started shooting. Okay. So his first statement to detectives, he said they were sitting on the side of the road, toking it up away from the party. And then he realized he'd been hit by a stray bullet. Now he says they were parked on the side of the road near the party when people started shooting. Okay? So, Freudian slip on behalf of Brian because he told the first detective he drove. Now, when he talked to the other detective, he forgot what he lied about. So, Freudian slip. Osmond was driving quickly and he drove off during the shooting. Now, we know he didn't drive off during the shooting because the final two shots were pumped and then he pulled out Brian out of the driver's seat so he could drive because Brian was shot. So, he didn't drive off during the shooting. He was still there during the shooting. Hell, you participated in the shooting, damn it. So, he states as he passed the South Maverick gas station when the tire started to act flat. So, family, first, he said they only made it to the Maverick. See what I mean? Now he says they passed the Maverick when the tire started to act flat. He said they pulled over, jumped into a car that was following behind them. Okay, three-car caravan to the hospital, red Dodge Charger, black Lexus, smaller sedan, dark in color, three cars seen on video. They're all following behind them. I mean, they left the scene together. Accomplices, accessory, everybody rendering criminal assistance, murdered by the city, you know? But we can't get justice. No justice. Can't get no justice because he's not white. So, we're going to go back to Detective One's affidavit. Brian later showed up to Cadillac Hospital with a gunshot wound to his, wait for it, right arm. Right arm, family. Brian was interviewed and claimed he was in the car smoking weed when the shooting occurred. Here we go again. First, he said they were toking it up. Then he said they were parked near the party. Now he says they were smoking weed. All right. But we know, as detectives stated, they turned off their lights and were parked as if they were waiting for someone. A premeditated execution. The Nissan was later found in the road area of Road 72 and West Argent Road with what appeared to be several bullet holes in the vehicle, again on the passenger side of the vehicle, coming from the left to right side, from the back rear side. Now think about that, family. All on the passenger side, from the left to the right, from the back rear side. Pasco police officers and prosecutors will not defame my son's character. The devil is a lie. Didn't unload any magazine. So let me go ahead and wrap this up and we'll continue from here in the next video. So let's recap. Number one, Brian drove to the scene. You're a victim. You're just sitting in your car and you're shot. If a magazine was unloaded, wouldn't you say someone unloaded on me? Or several shots hit the car, then I felt pain as I realized one of the numerous bullets hit me, or the bullets hit the car, glass shattered, the shots seemed to go on forever, and I was hitting my right shoulder and low back, but he said it was a stray bullet. Again, Denali Anderson never unloaded any magazine. So let's go ahead and put that to bed and bring the killers and their accomplices to justice. I like to say peace to my son, my brother, my friend. I walk in your strength, legacy, and power today and every day.